Welcome to Synergy, the interactive podcast providing resources for building a better life. I am Zinashe. I'm your conduit, your catalyst, and your coach to that better life. A coach draws out hidden potential in a subject. A conduit provides a connection, and a catalyst sparks change. So we are here today. We're going to talk about kind of some buzzwords that people might have been hearing about, and they may have an idea what it means, and they may not. They may be completely lost. And those two words are diversity and inclusion. And I have with me Colin Thompson. So say hi to the people.
Hello, people.
And he's going to be telling us about his expertise in this and then also his experiences with it. And I'm going to be doing the same because we're coming from two different backgrounds. I'm coming from more of an educational background, and he's coming from more of a corporate entrepreneurial background with this topic. So, but first off, whenever I approach a topic, I want to kind of talk about like, what does it mean and what does it mean to me? And like, what are my experiences with it? And also, with Synergy, the whole idea is more peace and fulfillment in life. So sometimes we have these topics that we hear in the news. We don't really understand what they mean. We're confused about it. We don't know if it's a good thing, a bad thing. So one goal of Synergy is also to provide that clarity so we can have that peace and to give some insight, to give different perspectives and different viewpoints on some of these, in a sense, buzzwords or things that we hear that sometimes become so controversial, but may not even need to be controversial.
Right.
So, Mr. Thompson, I don't know how old you are. I'm not going to ask you how old you are. You can share it if you want, but I'm going to tell the people I'm 50. And when I think of diversity, I think of what I did not have growing up. When I was very young, I remember, spending a lot of time with my grandparents. And when we turned on the TV, we saw Father Knows Best. And I don't think I saw a black face on that show. And Leave It to Beaver. And I didn't see a black face on that show. Right. And Bonanza and Gunsmoke and all of these different
Happy Days.
Happy Days. Yeah, I loved Happy Days. And these are wonderful memories. But I remember seeing no one that looked like me. I remember the first time it was a Saturday morning, just cartoons had just gone off, and a little black girl named Kim Fields came on the Mrs. Butterworth commercial. Yes. And I jumped up. And I ran in the kitchen and I grabbed my grandmother. I said, "There's a little black girl on the TV. There's a little black girl on the TV. Do you see that? She looks like me." I was so, kids just today, teenagers, young people, they don't even understand what it was like the very first time I saw someone who looked like me on the TV. I just could not even believe it. And then we had Rodney Allen Ripple, who was the first black boy that I remember besides Buckwheat, on the Little Rascals, being on TV, and he had a commercial also. And then, of course, we had a lot of faces that came up. We had, Facts of Life, and we had, of course, all the great, Good Times and, Herman Hemsley, Moving On Up, all those different things. When I was younger, none of that existed. That was not what I knew. And it was really important to me to see myself and to see positive representations of Black families and Black life, and I remember that being such a amazing thing when that started to happen. And I began to feel like I was American too, because sometimes as a minority, I don't know if you felt this, but I have sometimes felt left out of the whole American story. They say it's a melting pot, but I didn't feel like that when I was really young,
Yeah. I definitely know what you mean. And if you're 50 years old, you should not be calling me Mr. Thompson. Okay. I am about 3 weeks from being 48. So we're in the same genre. We probably grew up watching the same TV shows. One of my favorite, Little House on the Prairie. Again, not a black face to be seen. And I think that growing up in the generation, and what's so impressive now is that there are Black faces, Asian faces, Indian faces, all over TV. And one of the challenges I think we had during the 80s and 90s, when we started seeing or have more representation of Black faces on TV, we didn't see them in under the best light.
Mm.
So that we so it, the television movies, it was more diverse, meaning that people have different characteristics, whether it be race, gender, sexual orientation, more diverse, but it still was not representative of us, to me, in a positive way. It was definitely some, I'm going to say unconscious bias, some conscious bias going on there, because for certain reasons why they wanted to paint a certain picture. So I'm glad now that you see more and more people saying, wait a second, we want to have positive faces, not just diverse faces. That's a big difference because, as you said, we were just so happy to see Black people. Now we're saying, okay, enough. We've seen Black people. We want to see positive Black people. We want to see what represents the real community, not these stereotypes that have been so prevalent on TV, in music, in the movies for years and years and years.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And going back to positive stereotypes or breaking stereotypes by showing
Right.
positive images. I remember when I was watching the Miss America pageant
Mm.
and Vanessa Williams won, and my parents had already gone to sleep. And I was sitting up there because I wanted to see who was going to win because we have Black women in the pageant, you know. And
Right.
I remember knocking on my parents' door to tell them that we had a Black Miss America. And my dad said, I'm not going to punish you for lying because you probably fell asleep and dreamed that, you know. So just go ahead and go to bed before you get in trouble. And I changed my mind because he could not believe. He apologized to me the next day when he saw the news, but he could not believe that there would have been a Black Miss America. He just couldn't even believe that. That was not in his realm of thinking and possibility, you know. And of course, we know that there were some problems with that, you know, that crown and got taken away from her. But
Right.
still, the fact that she even was Miss America, the first one, it was just so amazing, you know.
And it was barrier breaking. It broke down barriers. Once she won, then other girls, not just Black girls, other girls of color knew that, hey, I can do this also. I can win also. So I think it was groundbreaking actually. She broke down barriers regardless of whether or not she was able to keep the crown. She won the crown. And that was very, very shifting as far as people's impression of how far we can go.
That's true. That's true. You know, and just that whole idea of inclusion, that we're not being pushed out or left out or forgotten about, but we actually are a part of and we can achieve just as much. You know, that was something that as I was growing up, I began to see more and more. And, you know, I just did a training for advanced placement, and it was talking about this thing called the backfire effect. And it was
Mm.
saying that when we have a worldview, we have this way of seeing the world that it's very strongly held for most people. They have this, you know, it's very like rigidly held. And they gave the example of George Washington, okay, and how George Washington had two sets of dentures, you know, and people have been told there's this myth that his dentures were made of wood.
Right.
And that's not actually true. So if you hear, oh, okay, well, his first set of dentures that he had was made of ivory and a bunch of other things, then you're like, oh, that's not wood. Okay, that's, you know, I learned something new. No problem. But then when you hear, for some people, that the second set of dentures that he had were made from slave's teeth,
From what?
then there's some people who that can't be true. Oh my God, you're just slandering the, you know, our this person who is a patriot and a hero and the archetype of, you know, the foundation of our society, and their, because part of their worldview is that he is this and he can be nothing else. The backfire effect says that when we, some of us, are exposed to new information that is threatening to our view, we react to it the same way we would if it was a physical threat. We get as angry, we get as defensive, we get as, in a sense, even violent
Right.
over an idea.
Yeah, you know, I recall Sorry to interrupt you. I
Oh, go ahead.
recall maybe about 20 years ago when I was a younger man. Like I said, I'm 48 now, so I was mid 20s, and I remember talking with somebody who was not black, and they were talking to me about Dr. Martin Luther King, and they said, "Well, you know, he had affairs. He cheated on his wife." I said, "What?" And got very angry and said, "How dare you beseech his reputation by saying he did A, B, and C," which he did, right? But as you said, I wasn't ready to hear it. I took the truth as being slander. I took the truth as being lies. And of course, this person who was white can't possibly be telling me, a man who's black, anything about Dr. King, right? So sometimes when we're stuck in our views, whether or not we put people on a pedestal and believe that people are perfect or can't do things wrong, or we have these deep-based stereotypes that are very hard to change. Part of being able to do that is having those conversations and training, quite frankly, training to help you. We talk about cognitive dissonance, right? To help you get past that dissonance, to help you not have to say, well, I have a different idea, the conflicting. I'll just go with my idea because I have that thought process. So I think training, conversations can all help to overcome people's stereotypes and the dissonance that people have when they're faced with conflicting views based on the long-held ideas and thoughts.
I agree. And I just finished this book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And one thing he said, which was really mind blowing to me, he said, whenever we learn something, whenever we find out a fact, we have to realize that that fact is only a partial truth, because the world is so much bigger than what we can explain in a single sentence or a few ideas. So, people, George Washington, Martin Luther King Jr., any person can have these amazing traits and also, along with those amazing traits, along with those great accomplishments, have flaws, have bad decisions, have horrific things that they did.
Right.
Those two can both be true. And he was basically trying to get people to hold their facts, as we call them, with a grain of salt, realizing that there may be more information out there that you may be exposed to that may show you those facts were not facts at all, or that it was a fact, but there's more to the story and it's a little more complex than the simple black and white thinking, and that we have to just be open to that. And I think with diversity and inclusion, we all grew up in a certain America, whatever that America was. And for many of us, that is either we loved it or we hated it, And if we loved it, we want to protect it. We want to keep it like that. We want to make sure that nothing tarnishes it. If we hated it, we want to change it.
Right.
But the thing is, whether we loved it or we hated it, we have to realize that it can grow and evolve. Everything has to grow and evolve, and change is a part of just living,
Right.
So when we're talking about, as I was kind of telling my story of how TV changed, and these minority faces begin to be a part of our landscape of entertainment. For some of us, for me, that was just such a blessing, and for other people, it was threatening. We talk about the radio. For some people, it's amazing that they can turn the station as an Indian station, and turn the next station as a Spanish station, turn the next station as something else. And for other people, that's very threatening because of the backfire effect. They thought that America was going to be this, radio was going to be this, or TV was going to be this, and they had a very rigid view of it, and now that's being challenged. And so I think that it's good to know why diversity is really a strength rather than something that's going to take away from anybody. And I think about learning from other cultures. I think about the foods that we have. I think about just all of the different beliefs that we have that have strengthened us. I remember so many different things I've learned. I remember like a story, just simple stories. Like I heard about the two wolves You know, we all have two wolves in our heart.
Right, right, right.
Have the evil, kind of fearful, angry, hateful wolf, and then you
Hmm.
have the peaceful, loving, courageous wolf. And this is the Indian story, of course, Native American story. And which one is going to win? The one you feed.
You feed the most, the
Now
one you feed the
that
most.
just that little story adds to our culture. It's something
Right.
that we all can teach our kids, whether no matter what our background is, no matter what our economics are, our politics. So whether it's stories, whether it's, food, dance, music, dress, there's just so much beauty in diversity and so much richness in diversity
Yeah.
to bring that in and say, hey, let's share in this goodness and let's include all these different viewpoints is a strength, but because some people have, I guess you could say, built their house in a certain way, they don't like their house being redecorated in any kind of way. They feel it's their
Right,
house and they're going to fight,
right,
keep it
right.
that way.
And one of the things I've noticed, and I agree with you 200%, that there is such a rich heritage of other people to learn. There is so much, I'm going to say, so many positive aspects and positive things to learn from people who are different from you. One of the challenges I've seen, though, is that being black in America, you appreciate other cultures because you want to learn, because you think you can learn something from it. But sometimes the majority, they don't feel there's anything to learn from other cultures. So they're not as open to trying and learning new things. And you see this really a lot when you go to, I'm going to say, when you go to, let's say you go to a state university and you see the differences in black and white fraternities and how they act and how they show their culture. With black fraternities and sororities being more physical, stepping, and white fraternities not being like that. And when you see and you say, well, are there any attributes from each of the fraternities we want to adopt? And you'll see the black Greek letter fraternity sororities really embracing and adopting more of the more ideas from the other fraternities, whereas the other fraternities will not do that. But that's a very wide example. But in the workplace, you also see this when organizations simply stop at diversity, meaning they will ensure, just like behind your head you have your mask on there, they'll
Mhm.
make sure they have diversity in gender, sexual orientation, ethnic background, all these different things. But that's where a lot of organizations stop. They
Mhm.
don't go for the inclusion part. They don't go for the equity part. And that is a major sign that sometimes these organizations are embracing diversity and inclusion for PR reasons, for public relations reasons, because they have to, especially last year. Last year, I got a lot more phone calls, a lot more inquiries, a lot more requests to do diversity and inclusion training. And really, when I talk to a client and say, okay, what's the background, what's the situation? It's really because they want to be able to say, we've done this, we've trained our workforce, not because they really want any change in the workforce, but just to tick the box. And in case somebody comes asking, oh, yes, we are compliant, we've done that. And I think that's one of the major challenges that organizations have, because when employees feel, and employees can feel when these programs are more for PR and not for true improvements in the workforce, you lose them. The trust goes down even more. And the other side, sometimes people get nervous. Okay, so now we're having this training, and this training, the organization may have what we call a quota. They may say, you know what, we want to have more women in our executive teams. We want to promote more women. So now some men may feel, well, it's not about merit anymore.
Mhm.
Now it's about whether you're a male or female. So how organizations implement these programs, they have to be very, very careful to be transparent and to make sure that these different individuals and groups within the organization feel supported, feel empowered, and don't feel marginalized, and don't feel like their actual merit is not the key indicator to getting opportunities.
And that's very key because I remember the first time. Well, I remember two things. I remember hearing that when Martin Luther King was doing the boycott back in the 60s, that there had been a study done in the South, and they were asking, white conservatives, white liberals, across the whole political spectrum, how do you feel about race relations? I mean, are there really problems in the South?
Right.
And only 8% said there were major problems in the South. 8%. And we're talking about blacks having no civil rights at all.
Right.
But it was so much a part of their culture that they didn't even have an idea that anything should be different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like people say, the blind leading the blind. When you are so used to something that you've never thought about anything different, it's hard to see things from other people's perspectives. I think that that's one thing about last year. A lot of people were forced to, because of quarantine. Some people who had never had a problem with job security, all of a sudden they did. And that was the first time they had ever experienced being on that end. Some people who had never had a problem with any kind of bureaucracy, everything had always been smooth for them. And now they're trying to apply for unemployment and nothing's working. And they're having to go back over and over and over again, week after week after week, and they're like, oh my gosh, people have been dealing with this for, forever. And I'm just learning how difficult this is. I'm just learning how difficult it is to get services. So I think that last year opened up many people's eyes, not just about racial issues, but about social issues, economic issues, just inequality across the board. And people began to see, oh, we need to work together to, diversity, meaning sometimes it's about bringing people together, including them in a coalition going for social change. And I think we saw a lot of that last year with people just coming together across ages, races, political background, sexual orientation, when it came to getting food, getting shelter, getting racial justice, and with George Floyd and the protests. So we saw diversity. I mean, last year was diversity like on display in mass in so many areas. And I think that was really beautiful. And I think it has changed America. But again, as you say, you have that backlash of, oh, this is a big thing now. Let's make sure we're in compliance, but it's not genuine. It's
Right.
not genuine. It's not really about change. It's just about, let's go back to the status quo as soon as we've had this training, but we've been trained.
We've been trained. Yeah. So last year, after the George Floyd incident and the other incidents of last year, because it wasn't just one incident, but after people started really seeing the videos, and being black in the U.S., we've been complaining about police brutality for years and years and years. When people finally started seeing it on video and could no longer say, okay, well, it's not happening. You did see a lot of people who are not black stand up. So if you look globally, there are protests globally, in France, in Italy, in South America, in Africa, all protesting the same thing. Not just police brutality, but discrimination and whatnot in the United States, in their own countries. And as you said, people from all shades, genders came together. And that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Now, again, I started getting more email requests for coaching, more for diversity and cultural awareness coaching, and asking to be on more podcasts to speak on what took place. And a lot of times they were, again, from people whom I felt weren't coming for the right reasons. For example, I was requested to be on a number of podcasts to openly share, as being somebody black from the U.S., what are the issues we're facing, right? And to give some context. And I noticed that for certain podcasts, they had never had a black person on that show before. So in my mind, I'm saying, okay, so am I coming on because they want to say they're woke? Am I coming on because you want your audience, who may not have a lot of black people in their social circle, to hear the truth, right? So am I coming on for a legitimate reason, or am I coming on because you want to sort of take advantage of the situation? And a lot of times, I'm happy to say, a lot of times It was for the second reason. They really wanted their audience to learn. And I think that is tremendous. Now, and they always ask me the question, Colin, how do I communicate more with people outside of my race and about this when I don't really have, I don't have many in my social circle. And I said, look, start at work. Start at work. We are trained. I mean, if you look at the work environment now, they train you so hard. They train you so hard now to say, don't talk about certain things at work. Don't talk about religion. Now, don't talk about politics, right?
Yeah.
And don't talk about issues such as race. And my view is that's the perfect place to talk about it. Because one, for most of us, that's where we're interacting with people of different races. So it's only natural that that's where we should have conversations. Now, not aggressive conversations, but water cooler conversations, lunch conversations, right? Casual conversations where you're learning more about each other. Because if you can do it there, you then understand and become more comfortable to talk to people outside. So work is the place where you really and truly want to have those casual conversations with your coworkers. And of course, that means that you must be in an inclusive environment where people feel safe and they feel like if they do share their views, they will be accepted and not rejected. So you have to have the environment there. But work is the perfect place to start having conversations on how we can be allies together.
I love that. And I think respect is so important because you can not understand, but you can listen and try to understand. And I think about, again, going back to different cultures. I remember the first time I heard the Indian parable of the five blind men and the elephant. They were asked to draw the elephant. And so these are all blind men. So one walks up and feels the trunk and says, oh, an elephant is like a rope. And one walks up and feels the legs and says, an elephant is like a tree. And the other one walks up to the side and feels the side and says, an elephant is like a wall, And, so they are all partially correct, but they are not seeing the whole picture. And it's when we can say, okay, I have my perspective, I have my experiences, but my experiences are not the total picture. Other people have valid experiences too. They have different experiences than me. I can learn from them, and being humble again to say, okay, let me learn from those that are different from me. Let me be inclusive so that I can be an ally. Even if it's not, in a sense, my struggle, I could still be an ally. And I think that that's something that we saw a lot of people try to do. They tried to, in a sense, as you say, become woke, and a lot of people hate that term. But that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to wake up. They were trying to open their eyes. They were trying to, some people call it become conscious, so they were just trying to become informed and to cast off some of these misconceptions that they had, and again, we talked about cognitive dissonance, saying, okay, this may be uncomfortable for me. And I may, in the very beginning, have that backfire effect where I get really angry and upset. But if I can just calm down and listen, I'll realize it's really not that much of a threat. It's just another perspective. It's just a bigger part of the picture. It doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change, my life in a sense. It's just adding more to the picture. It's just adding more. And I can take in this information without feeling like I'm losing everything. I don't have to fight tooth and nail for my worldview. I can be open to diverse worldviews. I can be inclusive in my worldview, And I think also sometimes people feel like they're betraying their ancestors or their heritage when they begin to open up to different perspectives. And again, we don't have to feel that way. It's a choice. We can be open to learn.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned over the past, I'm going to say 18 months, as I've gotten into more diversity and inclusion training and one-on-one coaching, especially in my one-on-one coaching, because I do coach individuals about diversity and cultural awareness. One of the things that being somebody of color who have been discriminated against, when we do now have the discussions on people wanting to be allies, let's say white people or Asian people who want to be allies, one of the things that we have to understand from their side is they're going through some change also. We may have anger, built up anger or resentment, but they may have guilt. And sometimes people act a certain way because they feel guilty. They may get aggressive. So understanding that they're feeling guilty and they may have fear. And I'll tell you what I mean by having fear. I had several clients whom the biggest challenge they had was accepting changes in their relationships, not with black people, but with their white friends. For example, I had one client who went in her Facebook and just used the Black Lives Matter background, and so many of her friends reacted negatively toward her. And they thought it was a phase she was going through, but she decided she is really trying to be an ally. She's really trying to ensure that her own social circle is more diverse and inclusive. And she started spending more time with people of color. She started really having more comments on her Facebook. And she said so many of her friends said, look, we're getting tired of this now, okay? And the relationships were different. So we have to understand that sometimes people who want to be allies to us, they're going through some things also. And we must have empathy for them. I know it sounds strange saying, look, we've been the butt, we felt the brunt of discrimination almost our whole lives, and now we must have empathy for, right? So it's very hard to understand, but we have to, right? We have to understand that anytime we're going through change, especially as you said earlier, when we're trying to embrace different cultures and change some of our long-term thoughts, we have to have empathy on both sides. Empathy for folks who went through it and are now a little frustrated. Look, we've been talking about police brutality for years, and now you guys believe us, and now you want us to embrace you, right? And empathy is that once we do embrace you, that may impact your social circle and your family relationships. So empathy on both parts is really what's needed for us to have that diverse and inclusive environment at work and in our social circles.
I also want to say diversity is not just outside of the culture, it's within the culture too. I like to say that Black people are not monolithic. We are not all the same, you know. And I remember when Juneteenth came around, one of my Facebook friends said, you guys, all right, who've been celebrating Juneteenth forever, okay, do not be jumping on the people who are now just starting to celebrate it and saying, oh, you know what, you want to come to the cookout now, because they may not, we sometimes we may feel that others should know and should have known and should have been doing X, Y, and Z if they were really representing the culture or whatever. But everyone has their pattern of growth, and everyone has their experiences where they learn about different things and they're exposed to different things, and we all change and grow at different rates, so
Right.
we have to, even within the culture, realize that everybody, there are some people that are always going to celebrate July 4th, and there are some Black people that feel like I shouldn't celebrate it, and that's
Yeah,
okay,
I have.
you
Yeah,
know.
I have a great Juneteenth story for you. So,
Okay.
as you know, I live here. I live here in Shanghai, China, and I've been here in Shanghai, China for the past 13 years. And this year was the first year that myself and two other gentlemen decided to organize the first annual, we hope it's annual, Juneteenth celebration here in Shanghai.
Oh,
So yeah. So we had the first one here in Shanghai, and we had over 100 people come out. Now, interesting, in a group that I'm in, it's an online group. I was promoting the event. Now, my family is Jamaican. I was born in Toronto, Canada. My family was Jamaican. So, in this group, it's a Caribbean group. And I said, hey guys, we're having a Juneteenth event in a few weeks. Instantly, we're not American. Why are you putting this here? This is not for us. We're Jamaican. Why would you even post this here? And I'm like, ooh, aren't we all Black? Right? Aren't we all celebrating what Juneteenth is about? So luckily, some in the group said, this is good to post it here. We are all Black, we're all one family. But those folks who were just like anti, it was very quick. As you said, even though we're all Black, there's still divisions, or people don't view us as being one thing. So we have the event. The event wasn't great. And during the event, I had a brother, a mentee of mine, who spoke for about 10 minutes, giving a motivational speech, a motivational message. Now, he is from Ghana. Now, after the event was over, we got feedback at a survey, and so many folks said, one, do not have an African speaking at a Juneteenth event. Another one said, next year it should be a black American event only. And I'm like, wow, that means I can't even go. I'm Canadian, right? I can't even go. And I was just surprised by the lack of inclusion that we even have in our own group in a strange land, in China. You would think in China, it will be black above everything, right? But it opened my eye to see that we have a long way to go, because when we talk about discrimination and whatnot, we always think about another race or people with different sexual orientation, but we don't think about discrimination within our own group. So that was very eye-opening to me. It made me sad, but it also made me realize that's we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, and that brings up, colorism and a lot of other things that, are within the culture. But one thing I did want to bring up, that comes up a lot when people talk about diversity and inclusion is, why are you guys always trying to include everybody? We were actually better off when we were segregated. We focused on ourselves. We had our own black businesses, and we didn't worry about them over there and them over there. We took care of our own. And all of this inclusiveness is what's got us in the situation we are now, where we lost 40% of our businesses, and the black family is in disarray, and we've got all these interracial marriages, and the people who are saying this are very upset about inclusion and feel like it has been the downfall of black culture, black family, black business, black everything. So what, as somebody who trains people on diversity and inclusion, have you ever come up with that? Have you ever come against that? Have people in your audience saying things like that and had to kind of combat that mentality?
I had last year. It was more related to the president last year than anything else. People had their views of what it would be. Let's say "Make America Great Again." What does that mean? So there was a lot of people who felt that meant that America should be not this majority one race, but really all the power, all the power in that race. So there is that. But one of the things that I tell my clients is that get over it. Get over it. The United States is one of the only countries in the world who has so many different races living in one country. If you look at even some European countries, they're still majority white. Now France is changing, but they're still majority white. In the U.S., you can be an American and be any shade, and not just a few, but hundreds of thousands, millions of people of different races. So the U.S. is very different. The U.S. is not going to go back. The U.S. is not going to go back to being just one race having all the power. Things are changing, and they're changing for the good. Now, having said that, the question now is not segregation, but the people are still living predominantly within their type, I want to say. You see black neighborhoods, you see white neighborhoods, you see Hispanic neighborhoods, you see, I want to say, Asian neighborhoods. So I'm not going to say it's segregation, because this is more planned, so to speak, free will, right? So you see that. And I went to a HBCU. So I went to a college, I went to Howard University, which is undergrad, like 98% black. So I understand the environment of living in a segregated school. When I grew up in Kentucky, I was in a white neighborhood. So I see the differences. And I gotta say that the one benefit that I had going to a black college was learning knowledge of self. So when you're exposed to what we call more information about your culture, that's great. I would not have gotten that at a state school. So when we talk about segregation or living in the community of people who are like you, I think it's great. But for a phase in your life, I think it's great. And then you have to, or you should, make sure you're in an environment of people have different backgrounds, not just based on race, based on gender, based on religious views, based on different things. The more diverse of an environment you can be in, the more you will gain. And if you have kids, the more your kids will gain as well.
Well, I agree with you on that. I had a very interesting childhood, okay? Because I went to Catholic school till seventh grade, and there were three minorities in the whole school. It was me, okay, for females. I was a black girl, there was a Hawaiian girl, and there was an Asian girl. And then there were, what was it, two black boys and a Hispanic boy. So it was like 3 and 3, okay, and everybody else was white. Now, the benefit to that was that the school had extremely high standards. Everybody, of course, was paying to be there. So you did not have kids that didn't care about their education. You didn't have problems with classroom management or, everybody did their homework. Everybody stayed awake in class. I had never, until I switched and I went to a public school, I had never seen a kid asleep in class ever. I had never seen writing on a desk or writing on the bathroom walls. Never. So there were things that I did that were culture shock for me. I remember the first time I walked into my middle school, and this is a public middle school, and I remember the very first thing that happened as I was walking in, I saw more black faces than I had ever seen in my entire life. And I was standing in the middle of the hall, and other people thought I was crazy. Because I just stopped. I walked into the building, and it was like one of those movies, when you see the person walking in the building and they just stop, right, and they're looking and there's just the sea of faces. That was me. I was standing there and I was like, oh my God. And it was such a good feeling. It was a good feeling because I felt even though I loved school in many ways and hated it in other ways, because I didn't feel like I fit in at all. I was like, oh my God. And I grew up mostly in a white neighborhood too. So it was almost like, and this sounds naive to say it, but it was almost like I didn't know there were that many black people in the world, to walk in. But then, I'm going to school and I'm making friends and I have my athletic abilities. I was, in choir and all these different things. So I had my little niches where I fit in. But then it was like, why do you talk like that? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're Oreo. Oh, you're not really black. Oh, you don't know this music? You don't know. I mean, you got to realize I'm coming from an all-white school, basically. So the music that was played at that school, and, I had the music that we played at home, so I knew a lot of old school music. But as far as the new stuff that the kids were listening to, I didn't know that because my parents didn't listen to that. And my friends at the white school didn't listen to that. So I was completely out of the loop when it came to who was in and what was in, and absolutely totally. So it was, talking about switching environments is culture shock. And then I went to a HBCU, and that again was so wonderful. Like you said, there is nothing on earth like a HBCU. It is just like,
which one?
I went to Jarvis Christian College.
Jarvis Christian, okay.
I was there for almost 2 years. So I didn't actually finish there. I transferred to U of H. But the only thing, I've never been to Africa, but it's the closest thing I think it would feel like is going to the motherland. You know what I'm saying? Because it just felt like there was just a feeling. And watching the show A Different World, to me, it really does. That show really did capture what it's like to be at HBCU. It just, the whole vibe, the love, the unity, it was just an incredible experience. I mean, I told my mother before she passed, I was like, you gave me some things that I didn't even know I needed, and I'm so thankful. So going to HBCU was one of those things that was such a beautiful thing for me. And then coming to U of H and being around such diverse cultures was also beautiful. It was beautiful in a different way, so It's amazing what it's like to have those experiences and to be able to go in and out of
Yeah,
these um, really diverse cultural experiences, and then these more, how would you say, more ethnocentric,
right.
cultural
I
experiences.
gotta, I gotta share my story with you because I have one also. Um, a story of growing up, so to speak. Same thing you experienced. My parents, as I mentioned, are Jamaican. We lived in Canada for a few years. Then we moved to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. And my first few years in school, people would say, "Wow, you talk so strange. You talk white." And
Mm.
we didn't speak a lot of broken English. And I remember purposely trying to use more slang and purposely trying to change my speech so I fit in more, even as dark skinned as I am, trying to fit in more being black. So I always regret the fact that I went down that route and didn't stick to speaking properly. But that's fine. But I remember I was probably in middle school and my oldest sisters were going to college at Howard. We were a Howard family. And I remember the first time going there to drop her off. And Howard is right outside PG County in Maryland. And PG County was one of the largest black counties in the U.S. I remember going to Landover Mall. This is in a black area. I walked into the mall and everybody was black. And I was like, what is this? Right? And you go outside in DC and black people driving good cars that aren't beat up. I'm like, what is this place? And from that moment, I knew I had to get to DC because I'd never seen so many black people not living in just the poor part of town or
Mm.
not just acting a certain way. And I remember when I went to Howard, my freshman year, I said, wait a second, you mean black folks can be class president? You
Oh,
mean black
wow.
folks can? Yeah, yeah. I'd never seen that. I mean, in my high school, we had one guy, Sergeant Arms, right? But he was the I won't say token guy, but whatever. But it wasn't until I got to Howard that I saw, wow, black folks can be class president. They can be in positions of power. I'd never seen that, and it changed me because it made me realize that it's possible. It's possible, and we can represent ourselves. And HBCUs just teach you really so much about who you are, and it prepares you for going to work in a diverse environment.
I agree. I agree. And I'm always going to be a proponent of HBCUs. Just they're amazing. So, getting back to diversity and inclusion a little more, I guess, focused, what do you think are some of the things that you want to stress to the audience out there about this topic that you think may be misconceptions or um, things that people need to know or focus on when it comes to this topic?
Well, I think that if I had to just give my views on where or how people should embrace this topic, I would say that look at your social circle. What is the social circle made up of? Is it people who are just your age? Is it people who are just your sexual orientation? People who are just your race or ethnic background? And what are you learning from them? I
Mm.
think we can learn so much from our peers. If you're learning the same things from your circle, it's time to expand your circle. It's time to learn new things. I think that going forward, we are seeing a more inclusive culture. We're seeing, if you look at the fact that Juneteenth is now a federal holiday, and a lot of black folks had no idea about the holiday. Imagine all the other things that we don't know about within our culture. Imagine what we can learn in other cultures. I think now that if you look at your social circle, does your social circle run the gambit of hues, all the way from black all the way to white? And again, what can you learn from other people? I don't know. Go find out. Go have conversations. And the better you're able to interact with people socially, the better you'll be able to interact with people in your professional environment. And the better you're able to interact with people who are different from you in your professional environment, the better you'll be able to embrace people in your social circle. So both are cohesive. Whether or not you start at work, whether or not you start socially, you really want to expand and really embrace other cultures. What this does, if you're able to do this, you go from just being in diverse environments to being in an inclusive environment. And that means that people feel like they belong. It also means that you will feel like you belong. A lot of people, when they're around people that are different, they feel self-conscious. They don't really want to show who they are. But by practicing and being bold and embracing people, the more you make them feel belonging, the more you'll feel belonging. Saying that word right, the more you'll feel like you belong as well. So that would be my takeaway or whatever to your audience. Really try to expand your social and professional circles.
Okay. Okay. I think that was a good takeaway. So, my last question before I'm going to have you kind of tell people how they can find you and kind of what you offer in your business. I have heard some people feel that minorities are hypocritical. And this is what they'll say. They'll say something like, you guys have Black Entertainment TV. You have Black History Month. If we were to have White History Month, that would be racist. If we were to have White Entertainment TV, that would be racist. And then most Black people would say, but 98% of history is white that we learn. And, 90 something percent of entertainment is white. We're the ones that are fighting for the space. So is there anything else that you would say to those people who feel like we're hypocritical? We want to be included, but then we have our spaces where we want to exclude other people?
Yes, yes. And it's taken me a long time to be able to do this and say this. I do not have the conversation with them anymore. And I'll give you an example. So last year, 2020, I was asked to talk about Black Lives Matter and here in Shanghai. So one of the challenges I had were people kept saying, you know what, all lives matter, blue lives matter. Why is it that And I said, guys, I'm not here to talk about the merits of Black Lives Matter. I'm here to tell you what it is. If you want to challenge that, want me to convince you, it's not my job. That's not why I'm here. So now when people say, well, you have Black Entertainment TV and Blacks are killing Blacks more than cops are killing Blacks, I say, look, if that's your belief, fine. I'm not going to waste my time trying to change your belief. I'm going to spend time with people who want to learn more, who want to be more open. I'll spend time with them. So it's very important that we don't fall for the bait, so to speak. If somebody doesn't believe your way of your point of view, it's not your responsibility to change their mind. Now, if somebody comes and says, hey, you know what, I have different reviews. Can you share with me your view and I'll share with my view? Let's have a talk about it. I'll do that. But I'm not going to try to change somebody's mind who's challenging. And I can tell doesn't want their mind to be changed. They want to change your mind. So I don't have those conversations anymore. I just let it go.
And that actually brought up another question. I have also heard the argument, and maybe this fits in the same category for you, that, well, we're having so much racism because people keep talking about race. If they just stop talking about it, then we would really move into this post-racial society where nobody would be concerned about it. We would just be concerned about people being people and people being good people, So does that fit in the same category for you where you're like, I'm not going to have that argument?
So exactly what you just said, I'm going to add an end to that, right? Mm-hmm. Right? And by the way, I don't see color.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times the people who are saying, can we stop talking about it? Let's get on with it already. Are they individually might not be racist or have these certain biases, but collectively their category or their race, typically somebody who's white, okay? And they're saying, let's just get past this. It's not a big deal, but they haven't had the same experiences. They're not feeling it on a day-to-day basis. And yes, being Black in America, you feel it on a day-to-day basis. Even if nothing happens, you just wear that. It's like going outside and putting your jacket on. It's just there with you all the time. So I would say that, again, if somebody doesn't have the same experiences as you, they're not going to feel it like you feel it. For example, if you have a passion, you have a dream, you say, I want to be a life coach, and help. No, I want to be a singer. I want to be the best singer in the world. I'm very passionate about that. And your friends, they may not really believe in you. That's okay though. It's your dream, not their dream. So the same thing. You have to go based on your experiences. Their experiences can be very, very different, and it's not your responsibility to validate their thoughts. It's not your responsibility to change their mind. Your responsibility is to try to learn more, be a good citizen, represent your area, and I say area, represent your gender, your race, represent everything you're about in a way that it doesn't contribute to negative stereotypes. And if you can, interact with people that are different from you. Learn from them and help them learn. That's it. Don't waste time with what I call the trolls. I call them trolls. Don't waste time with the trolls.
Well, one idea behind Synergy is that even small little changes ripple out and can have big effects. So one of the books that I read recently was called Atomic Habits. And the idea was that small changes over time lead up to massive changes, and so sometimes people are like, they have this idea that change has to be all or nothing. You have to go from, let's say, drinking, 3 cans of soda a day to never ever drinking it in the rest of your life. Whereas it maybe if you just drank half a can, a day, that's a big improvement. You can get to maybe not drinking it at all later, but anything that's an improvement is a step in the right direction. And so, to expose people to new ideas, to get them to think about new ideas, to get them to even be a little more open to just letting go of some of their rigidness and just being more receptive to being a lifelong learner and just growing as a person in their perceptions. That's one of the ideas with Synergy. That's why I like to have people like you come on to talk about, what you do. And so I wanted you to tell people where they can find you and a little bit about your company.
Yeah. So I want to first start with, as you mentioned, making minor tweaks to what you do and how those tweaks can really open things up for you. I have a little tip or idea for your audience to try. If you really want to become more comfortable talking with people who are different from you, and again, that can be based on gender, ethnic background, religious views, whatever it is. What's it, right? So let's say you're waiting in line in the grocery store, and somebody, I'm black, maybe a white gentleman is behind me, and I want to learn how to have conversations, casual conversations. I want to learn how to not be so nervous or uncomfortable speaking to people I don't know. I'll look at him and find something about what he has on. Maybe it's a ring, maybe it's a shirt. I'll say, hey, what's that? What kind of shirt is that? Or something just to make a little conversation, right? And what the helped me do was to be comfortable talking to people whom I don't know. Because I can see a black guy and say, what's up, man? What's up? Very easy. But it's more difficult when somebody is not like me. But learning how to just start a conversation is a very practical and strong step in you learning how to embrace people who are different than you. So a little small thing, just seeing somebody, asking them a question about their shoes or their hat or something to start a conversation. It goes very far because now you're not as nervous, and they are more trusting and more talking to you about something very casual, right? Don't ask with your ID. Do you live here? Don't do that one, right?
Right.
But to go back to your question, I like I said, I am here in Shanghai, China. I've been here for 13 years. I started my career here with IBM doing a lot of IT work, but I was very fortunate enough to move into coaching, training, and consulting back in 2018. And now I have a small boutique coaching business here and training business here in Shanghai. And I really, offer different types of coaching, but I think as it relates to what we're doing today, I'll offer what I call diversity and cultural awareness coaching. And as a result of this coaching, my clients are able to understand the attitudes, beliefs, and behavioral patterns to become non-judgmental and empathetic toward people from other cultures. So if you want to, and your artist wants to develop the ability to objectively evaluate situations without stereotyping, and to really learn how to embrace cultural diversity and awareness, reach out to me and we can be on a call, we can be on a coaching session in a matter of days or weeks. My website is oligye.com, oligye.com. And again, and then you ask the question, what's the benefit of really embracing diversity? And the benefit is really learning so much of other cultures, learning so much of other people. And that only helps and makes you a more valuable citizen and a more valuable employee as well.
Awesome. I love that. I love that you said that you want people to become, less judgmental. That is a beautiful thing. I mean, oh my gosh. Because, I think that when we judge, we're cutting ourselves off from things like empathy and understanding. And we're jumping to conclusions often. So I try to move away from judgment all the time. I try to be more open and try to put myself in other people's shoes and just try to listen more, because you can learn more that way. And I also have my own motivational packages. I just finished volume 2. So I'm going to show this for the people that are on YouTube. Or this is actually volume 1. So it's a package. It's $15 package. So you get a workbook, a blank journal, stickers, a motivational band, and tabs. And this is actually what it looks like,
Wow,
on the
very nice.
cover. And inside, each page is a different topic. So like the first page of volume 1 is abundance. It has a place for you to put a song, a movie, a book, an affirmation that are all related to that topic. And here, what it's supposed to get you to do is really thinking about that topic using your whole brain, not just the left side, not just the logical side, but tapping into that intuition, tapping into that creativity. Because when we use the whole brain, we actually retain things more. And I've been doing journaling for 30 years. Okay. But I bought all these journals. I bought a goal setting journal. I bought a meditation journal, a gratitude journal, a personal development journal. I never finished one because they were all repetitive. Every day you went and you did the same thing. You wrote 3 things that you were grateful about every single day. You wrote down how you did on your goals every single day. I was like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that again. I did that for 30 days. I'm done. So when I created my own, there are different journal prompts for each topic. And some relate to goals, some relate to gratitude, some relate to meditation and how you're going to really focus on visualizing this topic. Some relate to your, planning and preparation for this. So it's every day when you go in, it's not the same thing, because I need variety. I think most people need variety. And then for the people that are kinesthetic, they like to draw, and this is what mine looks like. So you have a place to put an ancestor, somebody who passed on that you want to learn from, a contemporary. You have your vision board space. You can also draw there. So, it's a way to incorporate all those things. And I actually just finished volume 2. So volume 1 was all A concepts. Volume 2 is actually A and B concepts. And I actually put a table of contents in volume 2.
Very good.
Yeah. And again, trying to get people to open up their thought process and really think about a lot of different things they haven't thought about before. Give them food for thought. So there's a little ticker going down across the bottom of the page. And, I have magnetic bookmarks, and I have motivational bands and keychains and all kinds of other things that I sell, so you can see the website down at the bottom. But I want to thank you guys for joining us. I think we had a great discussion about diversity and inclusion. And we just want to, again, for you to really embrace change, and that it's not a bad thing. It's growth. Life is change, but we can choose the direction that we're going to grow in. And that being more inclusive, being more open can just lead to so many different possibilities and just so much newness and freshness in life. Whereas staying in the same rut, if you try to do the same thing the same way, you're going to get the same results. But if you want a better life, a more full, a richer life, you got to open yourself up to new experiences, new thoughts, new people, new groups, and just really be inclusive and add some diversity to your life. And so I want to thank, our audience for joining us. And I want to say, may you walk in Synergy. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.